So that's kind of what got me going in this theme. And then I started reaching out to clergy, and I say it in every episode, the way I met you is I found you on Facebook. And I said, I want to talk to Quonekuia, Dr. Quonekuia Day. Oh, by the way, sorry, I'm just rambling. Welcome to From
No,
the Belly.
yeah, thank you. So glad to be here.
I'm outside of Portland, Oregon, and you're outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Yeah, right now, I'm in the heart of
Oh, you're in the
Boston.
heart.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm in the heart of
Right
Boston.
on.
You can hear sirens and all sorts of stuff going on in the city. So, yeah.
Wow. That's a perfect segue into the first little piece of, well, I got a lyric from a song that I want to throw on the table and see if we can chew on it for a moment. And then we'll
Okay.
launch into some of the things that you and I talked about when we were on Zoom, about some of the things that you want to talk about and that I
Mhm.
want to talk about. So that's the way I met Quonekuia, is that I reached out to her on Facebook and she said, sure, let's talk. And we talked. And then I
Mhm.
had the honor of meeting her son, Alvin, and I've done some work with him and he's really helped me. So again, thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making the time. And
Mhm.
we're going to dive in.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll set the table with this. I graduated from high school in 1977, and I grew up with classic rock and roll, and I'm from the South, born in Chicago, but Southern rock was kind of the thing. And then my brother turned me on to some heavy, heavy rock and roll. But I came across an album my senior year in high school that just grabbed me, and it was really an album that was kind of outside of my normal listening.
Mhm.
And it's by George Benson, the great jazz guitarist who's still alive.
Oh, yes.
The third track on the 1977 record, In Flight, is The World is
Mhm.
a Ghetto. And I
Mhm.
can't stop listening to that. I hadn't listened to that record for a long time. And I started
Yeah.
listening to it again. And I love the whole record. And it takes me back to
Mhm.
when I was a senior in high school. And again, it was a different piece of music that I was listening to. I wasn't really into jazz or whatever. I liked R&B. But
Mhm.
this song, and here's the way it opens. Well, it's about 7 or 8 minutes long, and mostly it's just his beautiful guitar work. And he does some scatting and some other things. But here's the very short lyrics. And I wanted to get your
Mhm.
take on this. You mentioned the city
Yeah.
and all the sounds of the city. So I think we could maybe
Oh, yeah.
think about city for a minute.
Mhm.
Walking down the street, smoggy eyed, looking at the
Mhm.
sky, starry eyed, searching
Mhm.
for a place, weary eyed, crying in the night, teary eyed. Don't you
Mhm.
know that it's true that for me and for you, the world is a ghetto?
Mhm.
Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for most people that I know who hear that, they might say, "Well, what do you mean by that?" That's the first question. So, what are you saying that I live in the ghetto? So we live in a world right now where everybody's slightly on edge. So it's not just, oh, I'm singing this song, I'm reflecting about it, I'm thinking about it. It's about what are you trying to say about that song to me? Why are you saying it to me? What makes you think I would have any idea about the ghetto? Right. And so I think these are the things that's first crossed my mind. It's like, why am I asked the question? This happened just the other day. I was going to Target, no, not Target, Trader Joe's. And the guy's out there, he says, "Oh, will you sign this petition?" And I'm like, I'm a voter. So I'm like, yes, I'll sign the petition. I said, "So what's it for?" And he said, "It's for defund the police." And I was like, "Oh no." I said, "I need the police."
Mm,
And so he laughed, and there's another police officer nearby. And he said, "Oh no, it's for such and such and such." And I thought to myself as I walked away, I was like, did he just say that to me because I was black?
mm,
Is he asking me this because of what I look like? Says that I am certain things. And that's the type of world we live in. So when I
mm.
hear the song, I think, why ask that question of me?
You.
What is the answer that that person wants? Before we even get to what the song is about.
Oh,
And
sure.
I just think that's we live in a hypersensitive world where people want to know, is there a message or a hidden agenda beyond what you're saying to me?
Mm,
It's just because I just want to hear your thoughts, Quinniquia. What do you think about the song? I think, well, it sounds kind of depressing. Sounds like the
mhm.
world is ever changing and sounds like it's a sad place and not necessarily a safe place. But before you can even get that answer, I think we live in a world where people want to know, why are
Mhm.
you even talking to me?
It's good. It's good. Thank you.
Oh, no worries.
We'll shift.
This is the world.
It's
This is the
good.
world we live.
It's the
This is the
world.
world
It
we
is
live.
the world we live in.
Yeah, that's why it's hard to get people even to come to church because they want to know, like, what's your agenda? Like, why do you even why are you asking me to come to church? Is your church giving away
Hmm.
something? Are they doing something? Do you want to convert me? Do I look wrong? Why do I look wrong to you?
Yeah. What do you
It's,
What do you
it's
want
like,
to take? Do you want to take
what do
something
you want
from
to
me?
take? Like,
Yeah.
I just want to give you Jesus, and they're like, I don't know about that Jesus. What kind of Jesus you believe in?
Mm.
You're like, well, my God, I'm just trying to say hello and welcome you into my church. And you have all these layers.
It's loaded, isn't it? It's just
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
loaded and
very much.
freighted with
Yeah.
all kind of stuff.
Oh, yes. Oh,
I sit in
yes.
church on a Sunday morning and I'm looking at myself as best I can, and I'm looking around and I'm listening to the things that are happening up front, especially the sermon. And I want to talk to you about preaching today as just a kind of a
Mhm.
subtext of what we're talking about or a subtopic. But I just wonder to myself, I first wonder, how is this landing for me?
Yeah.
And how is this landing for everybody? And
Mm.
everybody's probably having a different landing with the
Right.
passage. And the person preaching is preaching maybe one core message that he or she
Mhm.
grabbed a hold of, but how is it landing? And then there's no time to process
Right.
afterwards. Maybe the church has a place where people could process, but I would welcome the
Mhm.
opportunity to maybe have a midweek. Let's talk about how that landed. Because I've
Mhm.
had sometimes the sermon land in a way where, either I'm brought to tears
Mhm.
or I want to scream out in rage.
Yeah.
And now I
Yeah.
know you're an Old Testament professor at Gordon-Conwell
Oh,
Seminary.
mhm.
Wow. I mean, to represent yourself as an Old Testament professor, I've been reading through the Old Testament again, and I got some questions for you today.
Oh, my goodness.
I do.
Okay.
And
I'll do my best.
I
I'll
know,
do my
that's
best.
cool. And I listened to you preaching in your chapel. It was a 2023
Mhm.
19-minute sermon, if you will, that you delivered.
Mhm.
And I want to
Mhm.
talk to you about some of that because I just was reading that story in First Kings about
Mhm.
Naaman. So we'll talk about that,
Mhm.
about loving your enemy. But let me give a little bit
Mhm.
of your bio. You know your bio, but other people don't.
Oh.
So you're an assistant professor. If any of this is outdated, you tell us. You're an assistant
Mhm.
professor of Old Testament at Gordon-Conwell Theological Seminary. Quonekuia teaches at the Boston campus and the Latino Ministries Program at South Hamilton, Massachusetts. She serves on the
Mhm.
board for the Society of Gospel Haymanot.
Mhm.
Is that
Mhm.
close?
Yeah, there've been some adjustments to the schedule, but yes, I did serve on the board for
Okay,
Society of Gospel Haymanot.
there we
Yes.
go.
Mhm.
Dr. Day has a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from Emmanuel College. I find that to be interesting.
Yes,
A Master
yes.
of
I'm a
Social Work from Boston University, a Master of
mm,
Divinity and Master of Theology from Gordon-Conwell Seminary, and a PhD from North/West University in South Africa.
yes.
You've done some
Wakanda
time in the
Forever.
library.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
In addition to teaching courses in Old Testament survey, Genesis, Exodus, interpreting the Old and New Testament and Hebrew language at Gordon-Conwell, she has taught at Meacham School of Haymanot in St. Louis, Missouri, and conducted seminars for Pine Manor College and the University of Vermont. Quonekuia and I were talking about how busy she is, and her bio speaks of that. She's
Mm,
also a public speaker specializing in the area of Old Testament and sexuality. She has conducted
mm,
numerous seminars and workshops focusing on the areas of Old Testament, sexuality, mental wellness, conflict resolution, and leadership development. And maybe oh, wait. And Dr. Day is an ordained minister with the Church of God in Cleveland, Tennessee. Did you grow up in the South?
No, see, that's where the denomination headquarters is. So no matter where you are, your degree, your license comes from that area. Yes.
So I'm from the South, and I remember before I knew anything about church, I would see these signs that said Church of God, and I would think to myself, so does that mean these other churches are not churches of God? What's going on here? And
Mm,
she has over 25 years of ministry experience as a teacher, counselor, and outreach information minister. Wow. So,
mm,
what does your like average or normal day consist
mm.
of right now in this time?
My normal day consists of 5 a.m. prayer with the church every single day, except for Saturday and Sunday.
Wow.
And then after that, I get my daughter off to school. And then I start my day, and my day includes teaching, writing, and research. I usually come home and have some dinner, do some more reading, catch up with my children. I go, of course, go to Bible study on Tuesday and Sunday service. So, and on Sunday afternoon, I am sitting in front of my couch and watching the football games. Do not bother me.
Are you watching like the Philadelphia Eagles, or
Oh no, no, oh
oh,
God, no.
are you
Like,
watching the New York Giants? Or
oh my goodness, Doug, I liked you before, but now no.
oh, I'm not saying I like those teams. I'm hoping that you don't like them and I don't like them
No,
either.
I like the Patriots. I like the Patriots. I'm in Boston.
See, I
So
knew we were going to get to there.
yeah, 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 yeah,
We were
yeah.
going to get there. How about the Seattle Seahawks while we're talking football? They probably don't even
Yeah,
register to you, do they?
yeah, I liked them. I liked them because we beat them.
Did you ever?
Ah,
Did you ever? I can tell you
now,
at
why
the
didn't Marshawn Lynch just run it in? But
dude, I'm
thank God he
telling you.
didn't. So, anyway.
All right. So let's dive into some of the questions that you and I prepared. So I'm going to read this and then we'll just take it from there. The
Hmm.
hypocrisy of the church in showing mercy to Christian politicians for sins that they condemn among their church members. In some
Mm,
cases, church leaders would even be stripped of their license of those members for doing the same things. So
yes.
I read that and I wasn't, I mean, I'm aware that it's like relevant and I had a few stories come in my mind, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at how I think the Christians respond to politicians when they do things wrong, I just wonder how would they still have that same reaction to their own church members? And usually they wouldn't, because politicians, they do all sorts of things. They lie, steal, adultery, all those things. And the Christians are like, oh, okay, well, we know, but we're still going to vote for them, or we're not going to talk about those things. That's their private life. But
Mm-hmm.
in the church, we expect so much from people. We expect them to live according to the standard that God has for them. And I'm not saying that the people who are politicians are Christians or anything, but I'm just saying that if you're going to show mercy to someone who is, doing whatever and living however, but you can't show mercy to the person who loves the Lord, who's trying their best and they may fall short, then I don't think that's good. I think that sets the church up to be imperfect, because what happens is people start talking about their problems. It's like, well, I'm not going to tell them my
Right.
problems, because if I tell them my problems, then they're going to judge me. They're not going to really help me. But then as I'm looking at it, like they're very nice to the other people. They're nice to people who don't know God, who won't even pray for them, but they won't show me mercy. I just think that's not a good standard. Our public and private life, you know, I know people have public and private lives, but integrity should be in your public life as well as in your private life. So yeah, that's how I sort of think it through.
So is there something specific? So when we think about this, let's say the clergy or church leaders that would actually judge their congregants, what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say, and maybe some people in the congregation as well, won't judge the politicians. So let's first of all start with those that are unchurched and those that don't
Mm-hmm.
have faith. And we can say,
Mm-hmm.
well, you show them mercy, but you don't show your own kin, if you will, mercy.
Yeah.
But is there something
Right.
specific about the politicians that even get more freedom or more mercy? And I'm not sure
Yeah.
it's even mercy.
Yeah, I just from how I see things. I
Sure.
mean, first of all, you got just adultery. So if you have adultery, you get, people who are voting for you who are Christians, they may not say much about it. They may say, okay, that's the way they lived their life. But if you're a minister, and typically in any church, there'll be some consequences. You will, be sat down, you can have your license stripped, anything can happen. And God forbid if you have a baby out of that situation.
Mm,
That's like a whole nother level of sort of punishment, as I would say, because I think, and I call it punishment because I think it goes beyond. There should be some sort of, okay, you didn't do that right. You have to sort of get it together. There's some consequences. But this whole idea of just, it going on for like years, which it can go for some denominations, they can say, okay, you
mm,
can't preach for like a year or two. So that's one level. And then I think another issue for me is how people treat people. Just how we talk to people, how we yell at people, how we scream at people, how we dismiss people, the unforgiveness that we see a lot of our politicians engage with. And we don't call it out like we should as Christians. We should call it out like, hey, that person's a human being, whether you agree with them or not. you should treat them with some level of respect. But we won't say anything about that to them. But in our church, we'll expect respect. We'll expect people to use the right tone. We'll talk about everyone's created in an image of God. And it's just, it's hypocrisy, because you look at it, you just say, wait a minute. So it's okay for so and so to not treat people right, but it's not okay for, the church. And the Bible speaks about this. The Bible talks about in the book of James that we aren't to show this level of partiality
Mhm.
to people just because they look rich, right? The rich man comes in, escort him to the front
Mhm.
seat, you give him everything. But someone that doesn't sort of look good or smell good, you just disregard them. The Bible speaks against this sort of behavior, because we are reflecting the church. We are saying who God is. So are we saying that God is partial?
Mm.
Are we saying that it's okay to do it on this end, but it's not okay to do it on that end? I think we got a lot of work to do as a church.
So if we think about the concept of group think, a group will
Mm,
think. So why is it? Let's think about somebody who doesn't know anything about church life and doesn't really know much about this judgment piece and even doesn't know much about the hypocrisy, but they learn about it and they're not part of it. So they're able to be detached enough to say, what is in the water, if you will, that creates
mm,
that kind of group think. I mean, there's some kind of system that's intact in most of those
yeah,
church. I mean, we know the behavior is hypocrisy, but what's behind
yeah.
it? I mean, what's the frame of reference?
I think it's selfishness. I think, we as a
Mm,
church, we say, okay, this is how our church is going to function. And, we have these rules in place, which are fine. We have to live according to the word of God, which is what we should do. But if other people are living differently, we won't call them out, because we don't want to get our feet wet. We don't want to, find ourselves being in a position where people don't like us,
mm,
where people are like saying, okay, why are you calling me out? No, I'm calling you out about this because God wants better for you, and God wants better for everyone that's in the church as well. And so I can't say to you that something is the truth and then tell someone else it's not the truth. The truth is the truth, no matter who I'm telling it to. So I think sometimes the churches, they find themselves like, okay, we have our nice little club,
mhm,
and this is how we're going to manage our club. This is how we're going to hold our club together. But we are not a club. We reflect who God wants us to be. We reflect the image of God. So we have to be that way inside the church and outside the church. We just can't have this double standard. And we have these double standards. We just put up with stuff from politicians. We put up with stuff that goes on in our community that we would not put up with in the church. We would not.
mm,
But because it serves our own
mhm.
interests, then we say, okay, I'll bear with that, because in the long run, that politician is going to do something I want them to do. In the long run, the community is going to respond some way that I want them to respond, and I don't want to get on their bad side.
Right on. So this makes me think of what I referenced earlier, and I listened to it this morning. This sermon that you delivered in
Mm,
2023, and I think it was must have been at
mm,
Gordon-Conwell, and it was in the
mhm,
chapel service. And I went to seminary, and sometimes I wanted to go to chapel, and sometimes I didn't. But you roused the crowd up. You got their attention. So I don't know how many people were sitting in front of you. There was a guitar
mm,
behind you, and people came up playing. It looked like after you were done, people were going to come up and
mm,
play some music or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
So is that for the students? In
It's
fact,
for the students and for everyone.
let's set the table here. How many people would be sitting there on a given Tuesday morning, and you're delivering the sermon in
Well,
chapel?
so that was back in 2023.
23.
Yeah, so probably because enrollment is different now, and the more things are online
Yeah,
now than they
yeah.
used to be. I would say maybe 100,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So I also mentioned I've been reading through the Old Testament and I've been reading through First and Second Kings. And it's interesting because you are preaching on Naaman,
Mhm.
love your enemies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was really wrestling with that story.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also wrestling, and I've said this in the last three podcasts. Love your enemy. I mean, um, I didn't personally, I didn't dislike Naaman in the story. I
Hmm.
want to hear your thoughts. But I also saw that clearly it was written that this guy's bringing a lot of wealth and a lot of ammo to the scene.
Hmm.
So he's got this
Hmm.
ego, and of course, he doesn't want to be washed in the Jordan because you
Hmm.
made a point of saying, and the text makes the point of saying, that's
Hmm.
not good enough for him. He wants to
Hmm.
he wants to bathe in royal water.
Hmm.
But there
Hmm.
wasn't anything about him that I disliked, even though you made a point that if he's leading the Syrians, I mean, these were quite violent people.
Yeah, they were bad people.
But the story, if I just read the story and I don't do a commentary reading afterwards, I'm not disliking him. So I'm going, well, let's show this guy some mercy. But I read other
Mm,
characters in the Old Testament, and then I read
mhm,
people nowadays that are speaking on
mm,
behalf of God, and I don't
mhm,
like them at all. And I said it in the last podcast, I said, I feel hatred. And the person said,
mm,
it was really interesting. My guest, William Somerville, a new friend of mine, he said,
mm,
Doug, and this is in the podcast,
mhm,
the most recent one. He said, I'm not really detecting hatred. I'm really detecting anger. And then
mm,
I met with my spiritual director and I ran that past him and we talked about my anger.
mhm,
But you know what? People are feeling this, man. People are
mm,
feeling like mercy for Donald Trump, mercy for that. I mean, that's sitting on millions of dollars and people are
mhm,
starving. So
mhm.
I'm not challenging you, but I want to understand in your mind, what does it mean
Yeah,
to love an enemy? For example, I didn't interpret Naaman that way, but I know that he wasn't a good character. But
yeah.
what do we do with this?
Right. So, the passage there, I think the sermon was, "Is your love for my enemy?" or
Correct.
something,
It
something
was.
like that. And so, what's interesting about that story is, Naaman has just gotten victory over the Israelites. Right. He's just gotten victory. And then this slave girl, the servant,
Mm,
is the one that speaks the word about there being hope for him to be healed. It's just this wild story. Like, why would God allow someone who doesn't even turn to him to be healed? And the issue that is at hand there is that when he does get healed, all he can say is that God did it. It is a way for God's message to get to the enemy and for the enemy's heart, hopefully, to be changed. Now, the enemy's heart may or may not be changed.
right.
But we don't like that as Christians. We like to think of Jesus Christ died on the cross for everybody that we love, and he did not die on the cross for the rapist, the murderer, the thief. But truth be told, we got a lot of them people in our own family. We got people in our
Mm,
family that got issues, mental health issues. We got people in our families that have anger issues. We got all of that, and we would want them to be saved. We
mm,
would want God to reach them. And so we don't get to pick and choose
mm,
who gets to get saved. God knows who will get saved. I mean, this comes up in the book of Jonah. Jonah he's pissed off at God. He's like, "What? I knew it." Because God sends Jonah to the Assyrians, to the enemy, to preach the good news. And Jonah rightfully is like, "For real? You want me to like honestly?" It's like, I'm good. Who wouldn't say, "No, I'm not going. I'm not going to go tell someone that has been that has hurt my family, that has robbed my home, that has done evil things to me and people I love, that God loves them and wants them to be saved." But this is when we as Christians got to get out of our own selves. Like, we don't live for ourselves, we live for God. And so Jonah goes and he does it, and they get mad. But God says, I'm going to have mercy. I'm going to have mercy on them and the animals. And so we have to learn to do it God's way, not our way.
I really appreciate you reminding me, and you emphasized this in your message about the little girl, and you painted a
Mm,
picture of her. And so my heart went out to her. And
mm,
maybe for me, she is the conduit for me
mm,
to feel tender towards and love towards an enemy. Maybe
mm,
because she has clearly been hurt and her family's clearly
mm,
been hurt, but she as a
mm,
child offers the mercy. So maybe that's the
mm,
conduit. But I read other Old Testament stories and I can't
mm,
find any conduit for me. And I don't find God to be one who's really into mercy.
mm,
It's like God's
mm.
going, I'm not into mercy. I'm going to take all of
Right,
you out. So
right.
you've got a tough job teaching the Old
Yes,
Testament because
it's not
everybody
easy.
that really truly almost say everybody, but maybe not everybody, but most people go, man, the Old Testament. I mean, I'm reading through the book of First and Second Kings, and sometimes I
Mm,
have to put it down because I'm like, this is a bloodbath. And the word of the Lord comes and is part and parcel of the bloodbath. And I just go, there's no mercy there. And then we have the story of Naaman. So you have a tough job.
Yeah, but it's a good job because,
Mm,
we have to talk about tough things. We have to talk about difficult texts. You know, this is the only way that we can live out our Christianity, right? And all traditions, no matter what faith you're a part of, if you're Jewish, you're Muslim, if you follow Buddhism, everything has something that's going to rub you the wrong way. It's make you think like, really? And you sort of have to wrestle with
you have to
that
wrestle with
and
it.
come to your senses of like, okay, is this something I adhere to? Is this something that I'm resisting because I'm just who I am and I need God to help me? Or is this something that really is I'm just not there? And it's okay to say, you know what? I'm not there yet. I'm not. Oh no, it's gonna
Mm.
take God. I'm not there yet.
Would you talk about a passage or a story in the Old Testament that's a difficult one? I think now it's coming back to me. When we did our Zoom call, you talked
Mm.
about I forgot what book it was in, but it's
Yeah, Judges 19 probably.
would you talk about that?
Yeah, so Judges 19 is this amazingly painful, tragic story. There is a concubine and there's a Levite. And the Levite story starts off with that the concubine, she ends up being unfaithful to the Levite. So they are separated for probably 4 months or a period of time. And he goes back and he reconciles with her and then they leave. And as they're leaving her father in law's home, they have a choice to make. Do they go to Gibeah, where the Benjamites live, which is part of their family, their other tribes, or do they go elsewhere to Jebus, where the enemies are there? That's Jerusalem, but it's the enemies are there. They decide to go to Gibeah, and at Gibeah, a very tragic thing happens. Men are going to surround the city, surround the home of the sojourner that they stay with, and they're going to demand that the man be brought out that's visiting. And then the men who are surrounding them, they don't want the man. They say, okay, they want. I mean, they want the man. They don't want the woman. Put it that way.
Okay.
And so the old man says, okay, I'll give you my virgin daughter and take her. Just and the concubine. Don't take the visiting Levite, the man. It's like, no, we want the man.
Hmm.
Long story short, the woman, the concubine, is thrown out into the men. They rape her. They abuse her. At morning, she arrives back at the doorstep. We don't know if she's alive or dead. She's at the threshold of the door. The Levite opens the door. He tells her to get up. He doesn't even speak to her lovingly. She doesn't respond. He puts her on a donkey. He leaves, and then he goes to his home and he chops up her body and he sends it to the other
Hmm.
tribes. And that is a sign of war in order to fight against their other countrymen who have done the vile thing to the woman. It's tragic because you never hear the concubine's voice. You never know her feelings,
Hmm.
thoughts, or imagination. You never know what she was encountering during that moment. And it's a very painful passage and one that we do not often talk about.
Hmm.
But it has great relevance for today because one of the biggest issues that is going on in the world is sex trafficking, sex crimes, rape, assault, being abused. All of that's happening, but churches are oftentimes too afraid to engage these texts and talk about these texts on Sunday morning because, and I've heard this from my students because I've done a workshop on this
Hmm.
for the past 15 years,
Wow.
they feel that it will trigger the congregation. They feel that it's better to do it in a Bible study session. They feel like that's not the space for it. But I push back because we don't know what people are going home to. Someone could be going home to physically abusive situation. So we leave the congregation by not teaching these things, we leave it up to the congregation to figure out how to live life Sunday afternoon to Saturday midnight
Hmm.
because we are too afraid to trigger them by telling them the truth, the word of God, and how to deal with things like this that comes up. And when people are left to their own devices, they just say forget. They feel like, well, God, you can't help me. If the preacher's too afraid to teach about it,
Hmm.
nobody won't talk about it. then it must be too big for you to deal with, God.
I
So
see.
I'll just hold my
I
pain
see.
and I'll figure it out on my own because we lack courage. It just gets me going. I'm like, all we got to do is ask God, God, how do I teach difficult texts?
Hmm.
How do I help people with painful moments? I might not see this person that I'm seeing on Sunday in a midweek service. What do I say that they can get out of the text, that they can understand, so that they can live and know that you hear their cry, that you hear their voice?
Is it
But no,
helpful? Thank you. Is it helpful for the preacher? I mean, maybe even beyond helpful. Is it, I'll use the word necessary. If they come with this courage and they come with this difficult text and they come with this boldness and they come with this love and they come with this tenderness and they come with this care, do they also come with saying to the congregation, this is a really difficult story.
yeah.
This brings things up for me because
Mhm.
sometimes I don't know, because isn't it easy then for the congregation to almost somehow transfer onto the person delivering the message that they're not wrestling with the story as well? And I don't know, maybe
Right,
some people say, well, it's a moot point, Doug. They don't need to. But I think it helps sets the table for this is difficult content.
right. I mean, I do it with my class. I do a workshop on this every single time that I teach Old Testament, every single semester. And I always tell students weeks before the class that this topic is difficult.
Mm,
If you feel like this is something that you can't
hmm.
hear or tolerate, don't worry about it. You do not have to come to that class. You will
Wow.
not be penalized. And I think there's a way that you can prepare
I
your
like that.
congregation. You can say, over the next few weeks, we're going to delve into some heavy stuff, and this is how we're going to deal with it. Want you to know that this is we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it because we know it's heavy and there'll be a lot to tolerate, but we want you to know that we feel it's necessary because we live in a world that has,
Hmm.
and families are going through,
Hmm.
and we want people to know that we have resources, or we know of resources. We want to be the church that preaches the entire word of God so that people can really get the healing that they need. So it doesn't come upon them suddenly. You don't say, "Oh, I feel led to talk about rape today." Like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah, right. Right.
It's like,
Right. Right.
you
Thank you.
that's,
That's good.
so you can prepare the
That's
congregation,
good.
and then sermon like that, you don't want to go on and on and on. And you don't have to end it with a happy note, but you have to end it with hope.
Hmm.
Okay. It can be a sad story. It could be a terrible story, but it's a story that you could end with hope.
What if I have a question about that? What if there's like within that story, can you find hope in that story, or do you have to import hope in because we have the larger story? Or does
Yeah.
that story hold hope?
Yeah, I think the story holds hope. I
Okay.
remember preaching this at Hope College in Michigan for their chapel. They assigned me the passage. It was like in the queue, and it fell
Woo.
upon me. And so
Mm,
the text is in this. The reason why we have the story is because this is something God wants us to know. What does He want us to know? This is what happens when people do things on their own, when they follow after their own, do things which is right in their own eyes, and look after their own selves. We
mm,
have to be a community that looks after each other,
mm.
and just because you are a Levite, just because you are so and so, does not mean that you won't do bad things. Therefore, we're going to hold each person accountable to the same standard. So, yes, I think there's hope that comes right out of the story
Mm.
that does not have to be imported in the story.
Mhm.
It just takes, I think, someone who has some level of spiritual maturity, not only to teach it, but also to deal with the backlash that will rise up because of it.
Thank you, Quonekuia. Another question I have, and I would ask this of a New Testament professor as well, but I think maybe it's more pertinent to an Old Testament professor.
Mhm.
What do you do with this book that is just open to the public? It's open
Mhm.
for interpretation. Not
Mhm.
everybody has an Old Testament professor who can help them sort out, so they read it literally, or they just read
Yeah,
it like almost naked,
yeah.
we'll say, and then it gets so distorted, and then
Mm.
things. I mean, even denominations are built on it, and belief systems are built on it. So
Right.
uh, how do you deal with how misused the Bible is in the general public? How do you deal
Yeah.
with
I
that? Because you
yeah,
love the Bible.
I do love the Bible. And I think there's room for everyone in the Bible. I think anytime you're hearing teaching from anybody where someone feels less than or someone feels like they are not part of the image of God, that's not good teaching. And so one of the things is people will read and they will interpret, they will take whatever they can take from it because they're trying to find hope in the text.
Okay.
So, and a lot of times people just don't read nowadays. They won't pick up a commentary. They just won't. And so you do need good podcasts. You do need good material out there on the internet that people can actually find, like
Mm,
the Bible Project, different things that people can log into and feel like, okay, I'm being given material here without sort of a bias. Now, there's always some level of bias because we're human, right? So, one might emphasize one thing more than the other,
mhm,
but we want to try to stay as true to the interpretation of the text as possible. And when we make a mistake, and this is where I think teachers and preachers need to do better, where we have gotten it wrong and we find out that we got it wrong, we need to go back
mm.
to the people who are still believing in our wrong stuff and tell them that it was wrong so they can live
Wow.
in the right.
Wow.
So you have this awareness. You be like, oh God, I got that whole thing wrong. Oh my goodness. Oh Jesus, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Oh yeah. Amen. But you don't tell anyone
Yeah.
else because you're too afraid, you're too embarrassed that you missed it. But you must go back and tell them, I probably should have said it this way.
Mm, wow.
This is a better way to interpret this passage.
Mm,
See, that's a way you can say
I
it,
like that.
Like this is a better way to read that.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
better way to. I like that a lot. Gosh, that sets up the next. You and I were talking about Sunday sermons often
Hmm.
avoid. Well, we already covered that. That was the piece about judges and whatever. Let me look at this third note I made. Living a life of integrity means telling the truth
Mm.
openly, not just in
Mm.
private. Many
Yeah.
people are afraid to speak out against injustice because they fear for their jobs and relationships.
Yeah. So true. It's what's interesting is like right now we have, well, I pray the government will open back up. So
Mm,
many people are hurting. But for those, it's been an interesting divide. People are like, oh, we're going to hold the fort, don't open it until we get the lower premiums, or they negotiate lower premiums
right.
for the health insurance fees for the Obamacare subsidies. And there's some people like, open it up. And I would just say for those people who are saying, especially because now we have people who are really suffering, those who need SNAP and WIC benefits are now, if this doesn't open up quickly, that'll be an issue. WIC provides milk and all those sort of nutrition that little babies need. And so for those people who are like, oh, just we should hold the fort. I was saying this to my daughter. Those people who say that, okay, you have your job, you're making your money. Join with the sacrifice. Give up your salary. Give up your salary each week.
Mm,
You're saying, okay, let's just hold the fort, which I understand, but you have to also be sympathetic to the fact that some people can't afford to hold the fort
mm.
unless someone is helping them. So you think, oh, well, it's only been a few weeks. Well, if your mortgage is late,
That's right.
that's going to impact your credit for an entire year. So that's not just a thing, okay, they gave you back your money, fine. But now you took a hit on your credit report that you now have to deal with because they couldn't figure it out. And so I think we have to be mindful that even if you have a strong position, you have to be empathetic to how those positions are impacting people's daily lives.
Mm, it's good.
You know, you sacrifice, give up your $2,000 a week, and because that's your commitment to the cause.
That's radical talk, That's radical
Well,
talk.
yeah, we can't we cannot say things about things that we want to say things about.
Yeah.
We have to say things even when it's uncomfortable because it's the truth. And for me personally, I don't want to go to bed at night knowing that I didn't say what I should have said
Mm,
because I was afraid to say it, because then that person becomes my God. Then that person becomes the system that I adhere to. I have to say what God wants me to say because He is my God. And if I let you change that, then you have become my God. And I
Interesting.
think God would have a problem with that.
Have you always been this outspoken?
I don't know. It's just who I
Well,
am.
what if I met you in what year did you graduate from high school? Do you mind me asking?
I have toned it down.
Oh, you
I've
have?
toned it down. I've toned it
So if
down.
I'd met
Yeah,
you
I've said,
if I'd met you in seventh grade,
oh yeah,
well,
we'd have been doing stuff. We've been hanging out.
hmm,
We've been going on the sand castles and being very adventurous.
were you
I
outspoken
I have
then, Quonekuia?
I was outspoken. I have toned it down because I've learned that even in speaking, you do have to be conscious of other people's feelings. You have to understand that people will process your tone, they'll process your words, and some of them will feel it so deeply. I never forget, I was praying for someone at church, and I really felt the Lord was telling me to tell the person, to give up the smoking because the smoking was really going to harm their body. So I just prayed, and I didn't tell them that. I just prayed against smoking. I said, Lord, I pray the person will, get to a place where they're not smoking. Da da da. They were so mad at me. They were so upset, and and then I sort of thought about it. And I said, I apologize not because I said something wrong, but perhaps the time wasn't right. Perhaps the
Hmm,
tone wasn't right. So all of those things
hmm.
impact how people will receive you.
Time and
And
tone. Hmm.
time and tone, the message, you know how we'll run something through Grammarly and ask it, soften up the tone.
Yeah, right, right, yeah, right. And,
Soften up
and
the tone.
and sometimes you don't want to, right? It's like, no, I don't want to
Yeah.
soften it up. But to your point,
Yeah. I mean, we're human. And I'm a big crybaby. Like I'll cry I cry if the sun is I just I'm a crier. And
hmm,
so I'm also sensitive to the fact that, people can really feel some kind of way. And I don't want them to be so worn down by that.
yeah, to injure them more.
No, no.
Uh,
Because I don't want God mad at me.
okay,
Like, oh,
you don't want that. You don't want to go to
no,
bed with that.
no.
You have a conversion story. You have a I
Mm.
got saved story. Can you
Oh
give
yeah.
us kind of the cliff notes of that? Did you grow up in church? Did you?
Oh, the Cliff Notes. So around this time in November, I remember my grandmother died. And she was basically our caretaker because my mom dealt with drugs. My mom had me when she was 15. My dad was about 16. My mom was in Connecticut. My dad was in New Jersey. They met during a summer trip my mom had. And so my mom struggled with drugs. So my grandmother watched us, me and my sister. And I never forget when she died, my life changed. I always remember November because November,
Hmm,
my life just literally changed. I was 13 and everything. I went through so much poverty, times when I just didn't eat, didn't have clean clothes. Life was really hard.
hmm,
And I remember saying to God, I said, I hate you, God. I said, I hate you. And I just felt a lot of coldness come upon me. So,
hmm,
long story short, the Lord brought me out of that situation. I moved in with my great grandmother. Life became more stable. And then I went off to college. And I remember just still dealing with a lot of loneliness and a lot of depression and had a lot of hurt from relationships. And I made a decision. I said, I'm gonna stop dating men. I'll start dating women. So I started dating women, and I was really disappointed because I found that the same issues that were there with the men were there with the women. Same violence, same abuse, same, not that I was abused, but I just saw so much
hmm,
stuff. And I just got to a point where I said, I need to be saved. And there was a young lady that kept witnessing to me. One day I just said to the people at the club, I said, I'm going to get saved. I said, I'm going to church tomorrow. It was all dancing. I said, no, I said, I'm not coming back here.
And how old were
I
you
felt
at that time?
I was 21.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, 21. And I really felt the Lord was pressing me to do that. So as I'm leaving the club, I said, God, I said, Lord, I'm going to ask this one more person to dance. If she says yes, then I'm staying. If she says no, then I'm going. She said no. I got in the cab,
Hmm,
cried, went home, got up in the morning, went to church, gave my life to the Lord, really felt transformed, healing, totally delivered. Came home from church in my dorm room, my phone's ringing. I picked up the phone. They've been trying to reach me all night long. My mother had died. My mother had HIV. I knew she was
Mhm.
terminally ill, but she died. Long story short, if they had reached me overnight, I would have never gone to church.
Mhm.
I would never be saved. I don't think so. I mean, I was a antagonist of the church. I always had something to say about the church. I was always like, ah. But this young lady kept witnessing me, inviting me to church. But I would not have made it. And I think it goes to the divine time of God
Mhm.
because no one could reach me. They reached me after I had converted and said yes to the Lord. I went home to bury my mom, came back to school, and since the age of 21, I'm 54. I have been saved and fully devoted to God and living a life that I hope will reflect the image of God
Mm.
every day.
Mm. How old was mother when she passed?
37.
What was that service like for you?
I think people thought, I think people thought I was crazy
Mm.
because I was so happy.
Yeah.
I was, I was so happy because I was saved. And I felt like I felt that when I got converted, that God didn't ask me for anything. And I felt like everybody that I had been with had always wanted something from me. But with God, I just felt him fill me up. So like he didn't ask me for anything. He just loved me. And that was enough. And so I felt
Mm.
so healed and so whole. But in addition, the year prior, probably not a year prior, probably about 5 or 6 months prior, I had called my mom and I told her, I said, Mom, I forgive you for everything. And she was like, Really? I said, Yes, everything you did. I said, I totally forgive
Mm.
you. That's before I had said yes to Jesus. I just felt like I needed to do that. And forgiveness goes a long way. She's a good person, but she made bad
Mm.
choices. And those impacted my life and my younger sister's life.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I forgave her, and she didn't have to do anything for me to forgive her. I just forgave her, and I was healed. So I'm glad that I forgave her because when she died, I knew she was saved and she went home to be with the Lord. I knew I forgave her, and I knew that I would keep my promise to her, which was to take care of my younger sister who's
Mm.
mentally handicapped.
Mm.
I told her, I said, Mom, don't worry, I'm going to take care of my sister, and my sister's doing well.
Mm.
Yeah, that's the cliff notes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful story. It sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like mother was surprised when you said, I forgive you for everything.
Yeah,
She said,
she was shocked.
she was
There was like
shocked.
this silence on the phone,
Wow. Wow.
I just called her up and I said, I just forgive you for everything.
Mm.
I mean, my mom, she used crack, she used heroin, she overdosed multiple times.
Wow.
She and my stepdad, they would sell everything for drugs. So I had a typewriter that my grandmother had bought me. They sold that. My TV was stolen. They sold that. The washing machine was sold. Food that you would get from food stamps. We have meat in the refrigerator one day, and then they would sell all the meat for drugs. So you never had food. It was just you would just hope to have food, but many times it's just like no food. And I mean, literally, I would go to school hungry,
Wow.
and too ashamed to say anything. I would come home hungry too. So yeah, those are difficult times, but God saw me through, and now I can eat whatever I want.
Mhm. Cool. So, are you surprised sometimes, or maybe surprised would be the word? Are you surprised sometimes that you actually teach in a seminary? And I mean, coming from that story, you're an Old Testament professor with multiple degrees. That's a prominent place to
Yeah,
be in that place. How,
right,
how do
right.
how do you hold that? How do you hold that
Yeah.
responsibility and that gift?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think it's just God's divine providence. I never forget I was getting my MDiv. I already had my master's of social work. I was going to
Mm.
school full time for my MDiv, and I was learning Hebrew. And my teacher, we're good friends now, but she had a very elitist way of teaching us and just made us all feel like crap.
Mm.
And we started out with 30 students, we ended with 6. But I said to the Lord while I was in the class, I said, God, if I ever get a chance to teach Hebrew, I will not teach it this way.
Mm.
I will not. I think a year later, I was a teaching assistant for another professor for Hebrew. Maybe another year after that, I was an adjunct. And maybe a couple of years after that, they were interviewing me to be a full time faculty. And I had not even gotten a PhD.
Wow.
Now I teach Hebrew,
I heard
and
you speak
and
it when you were delivering that sermon
and,
in the
and,
chapel.
and
You spoke it.
that's-
I said that sounds
so
beautiful.
yeah, but it's I think it's only God, and I think it shows us that even if you go through something really really hard, just put one foot in front of the other. Just keep getting up. You know, fight as much as you can to get the supports that you need. Trust that God has a purpose for you.
Hmm.
Don't just don't throw in the towel because life gets better. It really, really does.
Are you called to be an Old Testament professor? Are you called to be a preacher? Is there this concept of being called? I mean, I could talk to
Yeah.
somebody who's in IT, or I could talk to somebody who is in the trades and say, "Are you called to this?" And they might say, "I don't even understand the language you're using.
Yeah.
This is my job." Are you called to this?
Yes, I am called. I am blessed in it because sometimes you're called to do something, but you don't actually get to do it for your job.
Hmm.
So I am called to be a teacher, and
Hmm.
that is that is one of the ministries, fivefold ministries of the church. Now, so what I sometimes I substitute in the Boston public school system. So
Yeah.
no matter where I go, the gift will do what the gift does.
Hmm.
And it just so happens that this is where the Lord has planted me. And I am very happy that He planted me here because there are so few people who look like me here. And we just need more people to be in this space, to encourage more Black people to be in this space. Um, so yes, I'm blessed in that I get to actually do my calling as a job.
I got you.
Some people don't
Some
have
people
that
don't have that,
opportunity.
but you do, and those are
Yeah,
different.
yeah, yeah.
I've got this nagging question going on in my head as a topic.
Mm.
Might have to have you back, but you're hard to get scheduled because you're busy.
Oh my,
You're
oh my
busy.
goodness.
It would be sometime in 2026.
Okay.
Uh, Quonekuia. Um,
Yes.
can you say a few things? And we have a little bit of time left. Race
Mm,
relations these days.
mm,
It's
mm.
it's it's in your lineup of expertise. You've got five or
Yes.
six
Yeah.
core areas, and one of them is race
Mm,
relations. It's on the
yeah.
Gordon-Conwell your bio. Is it here's her
Yes.
she's an expert in these race relations. What do you want to say about that today?
Yeah. We can't assume that based on what we see on the outside is what we think about people. So we think, oh, this person is Black, so this means blank, 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 blank. You know, my daughter had a very interesting story. She said, Mommy, some kids were telling me that had like homes where they had like lots of roaches and stuff. She's like, my daughter's like, I don't have this experience. You know, people, just because someone lives in the inner city doesn't mean that they are, without food. They have a rodent infested home. They don't live in a house. I live in a house, you know, so
You own
I
your
live in a
house.
I own my house. So I don't think so. For race relations, what's really, really important is that we need to not just come to it with so much prejudice because we're like, oh, this person is this, so this means that. You know, my children are part Jewish, part Portuguese or Brazilian,
Hmm.
part Native American, part African American. Um,
Well,
I think I got it all in there because my ex husband's father is Jewish, and his mother was Portuguese,
oh wow.
Black Portuguese. And my father is African American, and my mom was African American also, but her family comes from Native American. So we have 100% Native American great grandmother somewhere out there, great great grandmother. And so all of these things form who we are, and we have to be careful not to put people in boxes. Yes, I'm different. I look different. I'm probably experiencing the world differently than you are. But get to know what that difference is before assuming that you know what that difference is.
Got you. I don't really want to put this in like play a game, like a game show, but
Mm,
I'm going to say something and then I want you to tell me if you're comfortable with it. Your first thoughts on the topic. Nation
mm.
of Israel, Gaza, Palestine.
Conflicts. I just think of all the conflicts. One of the places I thought that I would never go is Israel, but then I was invited to go. The whole team of people invited 9 women to go, and I'm so glad I went to see the land. And so I have a vested interest in Israel, and that I know people who are there, who love God and want to see peace. I also feel some kind of way about the people who are being hurt and harmed who are in Gaza. Like, what? Like, how much bombing can we do? Like, who else are we bombing? Right. So that always was going through my mind that at some point, people are suffering so much that this must stop. So it's a place of heavy conflict, and I think what's important in this area is to listen to what people say about their experience and not impose on them what we think they should think.
Got you.
And the more people that you know who think differently, the better person you'll be. So know someone Jewish, know someone
Yes.
who's from Palestine,
Yes.
know someone who's Egyptian, know someone who's from South Africa, know someone that's from Nigeria, know someone who's from China, know someone different.
Mm, mm. In your locale, know somebody or go and meet them somewhere.
Yeah, it can be as easy as choosing a doctor who looks different than
Right
you.
on. Right on. Okay, so I'm going to flip the page to what theologians, uh, either living or dead, have been really primary in shaping the way that you read the Bible.
If I say none, is that is that okay?
I guess.
I mean, there's not a particular theologian. I would say the the theologians that fall within the conservative area, those are the ones that shape me because I'm a conservative Christian. So Dr. Kaminsky, Carol Kaminsky, who does a whole wonderful thing on Casket Empty, talking about the Old Testament and using an acronym of creation, Abraham, Sinai, Kings, Temple, Exile to
Mm,
explain it. Donna and Tom Petter, who do an excellent job with the book of Ezra and Nehemiah and really talking about the presence of God.
mm,
Hill and Walton, you can always fall on them at any point because they do a great job with survey of the Old Testament. Then there are some Black theologians who are doing great work, such as Dr. Esau McCulley, Dr. Dennis Edwards in the New Testament as well.
mm.
And you can't take away from Eric Mason, who does an incredible job with practical theology and also dealing with difficult topics so that young people can understand
Yeah.
the Bible. And so the conservative lens, but also those scholars within that lens who are, it doesn't, the race is, people bring up race and we don't have enough Black scholars who do this work, but
Mm.
those people like Cleotha Robertson, another Old Testament scholar, it's a man, but his name is Cleotha. These are scholars who are in the conservative vein who shape my way of thinking about
And
things.
most of those that you named, are they teaching in some seminary? Most of
Um,
them are.
Everyone except Eric Mason.
Okay. Okay.
He's a pastor of a church out in Philadelphia.
And what are some of the seminaries that were represented? I mean, you don't have to go through the names again, but
Yeah. So
right.
Gordon-Conwell, Wheaton, Fuller. Is it? I think it's. I don't want to get it mixed up with another seminary that's going through some trouble.
Oh, I think I saw your on Facebook.
North
Yeah,
Park,
you
North
said
Park.
yeah, you said something like, "What's going on there?"
Yes, and I'm gonna see her in the
Oh, okay.
next week or so. Yeah, I want to know when I see everyone, like what happened. Yes.
Mm,
So, though, I mean, those are the seminaries. I mean, some of the conservative seminaries are closing. Ted's and is one that has
mm,
moved to Canada. I mean, so they've taken a hit, and a lot of, some of the seminaries I don't do much with because they don't, ordain women or they don't really want to hear women teach.
mm.
So, so, what can you do?
Yeah, I don't have any use for them either.
Yeah. So,
Let's go back to the topic we started with.
mm,
Why not church, or maybe why church?
hmm
A lot of people, and you know this, a lot of people that either were cradle churched or they
Mm,
had a conversion experience somewhere along the way, like yourself, and they got
mm,
involved in maybe a campus ministry, and then they transferred into a church maybe as they got older and left school. And
mm,
they no longer go to church. They can't go to church according to
mm,
their own self. They can't do it. I know
mm.
somebody who the church building and walking inside the church is a
Yeah,
PTSD response just because of
yeah.
nothing about it could be something that's happening in the service, but it's
Mhm.
just the way the service is structured. People up
Yeah.
front, people sitting, listening, the
Mm,
whole thing triggers all kind of stuff.
yeah,
Okay, so
yeah.
I mean, is the church going to be here, and the church like a building and whatever, and this in it with a name? Is it going to be here in 10, 15, 20, 25 years? A lot of people are deconstructing their faith and still considering themselves to be walking with Jesus.
Yes, I mean the church is going to stand. The church is not going to go anywhere. I don't know necessarily what it will look like. I think there'll be some churches that are more liberal because those churches are trying to do more social justice. And when you do that, the Bible does become much more expansive and liberal. So I think we'll have many more liberal churches. I think it'll be harder for conservative churches unless they figure out how to strike a balance with being conservative and doing social justice, which can always be
Hmm.
a moment of tension.
Hmm.
Um, and
Interesting.
I think people are always looking for church. They always, and my dad's memorial, my dad was Muslim. And so I never forget, he said to me, he called me up. He says, when I die, do not bury me as a Muslim. He says he went to a funeral and his friend had died and they buried him as a Muslim. He said they buried him as a Christian and he wasn't Christian. He was a Muslim. He says, so bury me as a Muslim. Do not bury me as a
Oh,
Christian.
okay.
I'm sorry. I got
Yep,
that mixed up
got
for
it.
a moment. And I said, okay, Dad. I said, well, you got a lot of Christians in the family. So like, what are we going to do? And so I said, we're going to have a Christian memorial service, but we'll bury you as a Muslim. So he had a long, his service was like all day long. It was so long. They had the Muslim service in the morning, which I did not go to. And at the Christian memorial service, which I preached, a woman came to me and she was a Muslim. She says, I haven't been to church in a very long time. And she says, I'm so glad I came. She says, because you didn't make the service about me. You just preached the word.
Hmm.
And that was such an encouragement to me because she said every time she come to church, people start then talking about Muslim, 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 Muslim.
Oh, I see.
And so she feels
I
uncomfortable.
see.
But I just said we have choices to make and how we choose to live our life. That is really up to us, between us and God.
Hmm.
My dad had his own choice. You have your own choice. That's really what the sermon was about.
That's a good word.
Mm,
Thank you. That's a great place for us to end today. But I do want to tell you that I listened to that sermon that you delivered about Naaman, and
mm.
oh, I shouldn't have set it up this way because I was going to say, do you know of a preacher that said this, and then you would be like, that might have been me. You were talking about Naaman, and you said I would have slipped something into his drink. Do you remember saying that?
Yeah. Yes, that sounds like something I would say.
I thought, man, she read me because I'm thinking I would slip something into his drink. So I
Like,
appreciated the humor in that. It made me feel a little bit better about my not loving my enemies.
yeah, yeah, we're human.
Oh, aren't we?
Hmm.
Aren't we?
Yeah.
Anything else that you want to say to me or to the listening audience? And I'm imagining a lot of people, this will be their first opportunity to meet you. Um,
Yeah, I'm so glad to be with you today. I mean, I'm just so thankful. You
oh,
didn't have to open up your podcast to me. You could have said, "Okay, that was good to hear her," but so just really thankful. And I would just want people to sort of take away from this. No matter where you are at life, you have to at some point give an account between you and God.
mm,
It comes down to how you live your life before God.
mm,
No matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody does, how are you experiencing God in your life? If you're mad at God, talk to him. You're angry, talk to him. You love him and you don't understand him, talk to him.
wow,
God wants to be a part of your life, and you can't have God a part of your life if you don't talk to him. So I say engage with God,
wow,
and I pray that things will work out really well for you.
wow. Dr. Quonekuia Day, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Um, This has been a blessing. I'm grateful. Really, really grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm sure you got things to do this afternoon. Hang with me when I click off because we got to watch this
Okay.
upload. We sure don't want to
Okay.
miss anything, and then we'll be done. So, folks, thanks for listening. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be with a woman who's strong in head, strong in heart, and clearly got a strong voice. So keep speaking. Yeah, keep
Yay.
speaking. Bless you. Thank you.
Amen.